Welcome to Women in the Music Industry, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the remarkable women who are breaking barriers and making their mark in an industry that has long been dominated by men. I'm your host, Rob Wells, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this empowering journey. Each episode of this podcast will be dedicated to exploring the inspiring stories, accomplishments, and struggles of the extraordinary women who have defied the odds and made waves in the music business. Together, we'll delve into the journeys of female artists, songwriters, producers, musicians, managers, executives, and all those who have helped play a pivotal role behind the scenes. We'll uncover the stories that deserve to be heard, as well as celebrate the triumphs, challenges, and unique perspectives that women bring to the music industry. Whether you're a fan of music, an aspiring artist, or simply curious about the inner workings of the music business, this podcast will offer a valuable perspective. Together, we'll celebrate the power of music and the strength of these inspiring women. So join us as we amplify their voices and together pave the way for a future where women in the music business are no longer the exception, but the rule. Today's podcast is sponsored by the Songwriter's Piano, an easy-to-use app for songwriters and lyricists to use when coming up with song ideas when there's no instrument around or nobody to play one. With the Songwriter's Piano, one can easily play commonly used pop songwriting chord sequences at the touch of a screen, in any key, in 3 different chord variations, all played on a gorgeously recorded grand piano. Download the Songwriter's Piano by Play Like Me apps today, found on both iOS and Android stores everywhere. Welcome everyone to another episode of Women in the Music Industry. For those of you that are returning, welcome back. For those of you that are here for the first time, welcome. I'm so happy that you are here. I am very excited about today's episode because we have my very, very good friend, Tara Shannon. Hi, Tara. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so thankful that you're here. I'm thrilled. This is great. This is a really, really cool angle of the music industry that we're going to go down and just, I think it's going to be really informative to everyone. Before we get started, I'm just going to give a bit of a bio, a little bit of a background about Tara. So Tara Shannon wears many hats. Believe me, many hats, and has achieved more success than most independent music artists ever have. Her journey has defied the odds as she re-entered the music industry as a woman in her 40s and quickly gained an audience locally, nationally, and internationally. Tara is an award-winning singer-songwriter, an accomplished artist, and sought-after songwriter commissioned by clients such as Nortel, Morgard, Canada Without Poverty, the Ottawa Archdiocese, and the Canadian Showtime Chorus, to name a few. Her album Unfinished, released in 2017, is a soft rock country soul album, with her first single landing in radio's top 10 indie downloads across Canada. Shannon has been a guest performer at CTV's Amazing People Gala, the United Way National Conference, CMA Fest Nashville, and has also appeared on CTV Ottawa, Ottawa Citizen, Ottawa Beat, Ottawa Life Magazine, Rogers Ottawa, holy moly, a lot of Ottawa, 1310 News, is that in Ottawa? I'm assuming it is.
It is. Yep.
Okay, all right, and more, with performances at Blues Fest, which I know is in Ottawa, the NAC, and a tour in the Maritimes of Canada. Dividing her time between Ottawa and Nashville, Tara seeks to encourage and empower other artists on the record label she founded, Willow Sound Records. Like, I'm just passing by all these things like they're just little things, but these are all massive things. Like, you have your own record label. This is great. In her music business education with The Syndicate, another entity she founded, of course, Tara helps educate music creators and encourage them to see themselves as entrepreneurs. Her experiences in teaching workshops and classes inspired her to write a book, as one does after all those things. And it is called You and the Music Business, a self-care guide to finding balance and joy in today's music industry, to empower other independent artists who find themselves on a similar path. Wow, that's an amazing bio. And you're just, yeah, but I feel like you're just getting started though. Like, it's just, I know you, I know how driven you are. And it's just like, you're always just up to a whole bunch of things. You and I were just speaking just before we started recording this. And you said that you've got 5 artists on your labels that are going out this weekend, and you've got to take care of where they are and what they're doing. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that? What that's
Yeah,
like?
it's kind of like, yeah, it's the next version of me being a mom, being a mother, now that my kids are raised and grown, it feels a little bit like the same job as just like, where is everybody? Does everybody have what they need? And it's festival season, so my artists are out all out on the road, and I love it. I love it so much that it doesn't feel like work. I'm sure you can relate. Like when you're doing what you love and you're just, you're in, there's a sense of alignment or being in the flow of life, and it just feels good. It doesn't feel like stressful or like, you're not in resistance. So I feel very lucky and very grateful most days to just be working in music, because come on, it's the best gig ever.
It's the best gig ever. Yes, I feel the same way. I feel so lucky that you are here today. I think this is great. And speaking of children, you are a mother of how many?
I have 7 kids. I have 5 boys and 2 girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I love the joke that says if you have one child, you're a parent. If you have two or more children, you're a referee. And because it's really just like, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing over there? And just maybe it's from the experience of that is just, you're so great at just like being a referee for all of your artists that you have, and just what are they doing, and how are they doing it, and how successful are they, and all the different facets that go into taking care of artists.
Yeah, I mean, being a parent, you've got a big brood too. And, I feel like I survived. I'm on the other side because my oldest is 30 now and my youngest will be 17. So they don't need me in the same way or as much. But yeah, you learn a lot of skills, time management. They all played hockey and most of them played competitive hockey. So, those years were really busy doing that. So I do feel like I've sort of have my life back, if you will.
Yes.
So I have time to do all these ventures that I've been waiting to do.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. So many adventures that you've been up to in the last few years, and beyond that. How did you get to be this amazing, driven person in the music industry? Where did it all begin? Did you have some sort of musical interest when you were first coming around in
I
Ottawa, I'm
did,
assuming?
yeah.
Are you from Ottawa originally?
I'm from Montreal
Oh,
originally.
okay,
Yeah,
cool.
born and raised in Montreal, and then I moved to the little town I live in, which is just on the edge of Ottawa, called Russell. And I've been there for 30 years. So I came to town when I was 19. And I had my first little baby. He was 6 months old, Adam. And yeah, we've been there ever since. I love the little town I'm in. And I also love the Ottawa music community. I'm really involved there. But yeah, my journey with music started when I was 7. I started taking piano lessons and just fell in love with this thing called music. And so studied the Royal Conservatory as a piano player. And then I picked up the saxophone in high school and then studied that. And I was a jazz saxophone student at McGill University in Montreal. Uh, and my plan was to go into music education, or music therapy was really pulling at me. And but then I became a mom very young, and so my plans kind of changed. And so I started writing songs. And my first song I wrote, which was for my cousin's wedding. And I kind of chuckle when I talk about it because I do not recommend gifting somebody a song when you've never written a song before on the most special day of their lives. But it worked out. It was
This
okay.
was your very first song that you had ever written, ever?
Yeah.
That you'd never
Yeah.
been writing poetry or coming up with melodies or chord structures or anything before that? Wow.
No,
Okay.
I just had this overwhelming feeling. So do you know the love languages? Are you familiar with the love languages?
A
So
little bit, yeah.
gifts, yeah, gifts is there's 5 of them, and gifts are mine. So giving people gifts is my way of communicating how much I care about them. And so I just wanted something really special. And I just sat at the piano and just started fooling around. I was like, what is it that I want to say? And it kind of, came like sprung up from just inside me. And it was just this thing, I think, just sitting there waiting to come to the surface or be invited. And yeah, so I wrote the song for their wedding and sang it because they'd asked me to sing at their wedding. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if I, had an original song? I don't know what I was thinking, but yes, so it's not something I recommend, but it worked out for me. And yeah,
Fantastic.
so I fell in love with songwriting. And then once I performed, I mean, you can relate to this. Once I performed something that I wrote for an audience and got a connection back, like that was it. I was done. Like you're hooked. from that moment on, because it was this amazing way for me to express and connect what I was experiencing in life and the way that I felt things and how I saw things. And so I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I want to be a songwriter. I want to be a recording artist. And so I chased that, because back then there's no internet, no social media. The only thing you people were telling me was, you need a record deal, you need a record deal. Having zero understanding of what a record deal was or anything. I was just chasing this thing called a record deal. And so I did get offered a deal with a small label connected to, I think it was Word Music at the time, because it was in CCM. And they were explaining to me, they're like, okay, like, it's 2 years, no family, no friends. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, you have to be fully committed and be on the road, and we're going to put records out. And I was like, whoa, 2 years, no family, no friends. I can't do that, because I had 3 young boys at the time. I was like, that's not going to work for me. So I don't think this is really what I'm meant to do.
Wow.
And so that's when I let go of my dream, if you will, of being a recording artist, and just focused on songwriting, and kind of built a niche where I was hired to write songs for organizations or events. And I just kind of worked those projects around, being a mom.
It's amazing how much things have changed over the years, just where, you have to say goodbye to your family and friends. That really, truly doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it does if you wanted to, but there's also a whole bunch of different other avenues that you can go down now where, for example, we just had Megan Smith on the podcast, and she is somebody that is totally having a great career at home, taking care of her 2 kids with her husband, and they get to write songs all over the place and release their albums and have a lot of great success out there. The world has changed, thankfully, and going forward, I think it's going to change even more.
Absolutely. It's really, we could have a conversation about social media. It's its own thing you can talk about for days, but, it does offer you, to some degree, the opportunity, or the internet does, to find your audience and to reach people. So you don't need the middle people anymore the same way. Mm-hmm. So I see a lot of that as a really beautiful thing.
For sure. How different was it writing for these companies like Nortel, Morgard, as different from writing for yourself as an artist?
Yeah, it is. It is a different vibe. Like, it's a different frame of mind, because when you're creating, whether you're writing if I'm writing for myself, it's very, Tara Shannon, like, what do I want to say? What's my vibe? Melodic structures, all that stuff. If I'm writing for pitch for another artist, you're kind of absorbing, what that artist is all about, and then trying to communicate it. And so it's kind of like that with a company. I spend a lot of time listening to, because they don't often have the language to really communicate what it is they want. They just know it's cool to have music involved. So to really nail the messaging, you have to really listen. Like, what are they hoping to communicate, and what's the feeling attached to that, so that you don't fall into just like informational lyric where you're just like, where that it sounds more like a commercial, like, as opposed to something that you really feel. Mm-hmm. So I spend a lot of time listening. I really dig into like their mission statements, the history of what what they've accomplished, and then try to find that nugget, that core idea you can springboard off of, and then write from there. And it's worked out really well. And maybe just a couple of edits. Most time when people get the first version, there'll be a couple words that they think, oh, that doesn't fit. But overall, it's been a really wonderful experience. It's a nice way to write. It's very challenging as a songwriter.
Oh, I can imagine. And now, are these 3.5-minute pop songs, or are they more 30-second commercials, or how does it work?
No, they're like 3.5 to 4 minute, commercial songs.
Okay. And it's just they come to you with an idea, with something that they're trying to promote, and or a feeling that they're trying to give for the company. Maybe they use it for, is it internal use that they use it for, or just like?
They use it for, I'm trying to think of the last couple of projects I did. So the last one I did was the Canadian Palliative Care Association of Canada. So the Hospice and Palliative Care Association. And so they had a campaign and messaging they wanted to get out to the Canadian people about advanced care planning. So encouraging people to have conversations about end of life before it's a crisis situation. So kind of normalizing conversations about end of life. And this was challenging, because essentially they wanted me to write a song about death that was like happy for people. I was like, all right.
Challenge accepted.
challenge accepted, you know? And so really, because we focused on, the campaign was called, Speak Up, I think was the name of the campaign. So we settled in on the word say. And so we wrote the song called Say, which is like, tell me all the things that matter to you now. Like, I know these things about you. I know that you like, cream in your coffee. I know that you prefer the Rolling Stones over Beatles. I know, like, I'm just trying to remember some of the lyric. But tell me what really matters to you. Like, in the end, what is really going to matter to you? And so that's the song, encourages that. And so what they used it with is we created a video as well. And so it became part of their marketing package. That rolled out with this campaign.
Wow. That's so tricky to write something like that, but good for you for coming through with that and finding a way to a great angle in which to present it in such a way that it's easily digestible for people. That's a tough subject to write about.
It is. And, finding the right co-writers for it is a huge key to success, because I'm kind of like the scout ant and I kind of absorb, what is needed, and I get hired for the project. But then I think who's going to be the great complement to what I know my strengths and weaknesses are as a songwriter? Who's going to complement me or create this little bubble of creativity that has the highest chance of, spitting out something that this client needs? So that's also a big part of the process is reaching out to people that I know will be effective in the role,
Wow. Okay. So jumping forward a little bit, can we talk about your album Unfinished, which came out? I'm very excited about that. Is this is the moment where you defied the odds and re-entered the music industry? So you left the music industry for a little bit. You started doing music for companies, and then you decided enough's enough. I'm going to do my own music. Maybe you could just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting way back. It started with a health crisis. I had a bad health crisis, and I was dealing with a lot in my life, and was just, I was I was pretty unhappy. And I ended up with this health crisis. And when I was recovering, I made a bucket list, because I was like, okay, I cannot keep living like this. Like, I have to make some major changes. And at the top of that was bringing music back into my life in some way. And so I just, I started taking, I didn't want to chase being a rock star anymore or anything like that. I just knew that I needed to be creative, because in the time where I was raising the kids, I also started a group of companies with their dad in a different industry. So we were building this big company. We had about 125 employees. So it was, it was not a small thing. And I had nothing creative in my life, no creative outlet. So it was a moment for me to make the connection and go, wait, okay, this is a big part of me, because I think a lot of people, and particularly women listening, we tend to lose ourselves under the weight of the titles of wife, mother, business partner, business owner. And I had really lost all of the things that made me Tara, like the things that were just really me. And so once I kind of saw that more clearly, I made some changes, and I started, back taking master classes in songwriting, and found wonderful mentors, and just started going to Nashville, and just really just wanted to learn and learn and learn. And then I met, I had known him, but he came into my life in a more concrete way. You may remember him. His name was Jonathan Petrie in English, the butterfly child. Mm-hmm. He had this skin disease, and his epidermolysis bullosa, which basically means the skin, you don't make collagen, so the skin doesn't hold together. And his story, TSN did this beautiful documentary on him, and his story went global. And he and his family lived on my street in Russell, and his sister played hockey with my daughter. So I knew them from the community. And so somebody reached out to see if I would help with a fundraising campaign for him. And so I wrote a song with Northeastern. Would you know North?
Yeah, I know him through Roseanne.
Yeah, that's right.
Farmley.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's great. So I reached out to North and said, hey, it's this community project. Do you want to write this song together? So we wrote a song called Butterfly Child, and with only the intention to go sing it at this fundraiser thing at this school. But it was really, really well received. And Jonathan was the one that said to me, as we got to know each other more and working with him through this campaign, he's like, why aren't you making that record you always promised yourself you wanted to make? So, it's when you're standing there, talking to this 16-year-old kid who's basically schooling you and calling you out on your entire life and, I didn't really have any smart answers. And I was like, you know what, kid, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because he's like, you don't know, you don't know how long you have. You don't know what's going to happen in life. And so he was a real profound influence on me as far as my when. I really believe that people cross your paths in this lifetime for, at certain moments for very specific reasons. And he definitely was that for me. And so, yeah, so I worked with him for a couple of years and helped with his social media and stuff. Sadly, we lost him in 2018, but
I'm sorry.
yeah, he succumbed to his illness after trying a couple of experimental surgeries. But yeah, so I really miss him a lot, and I feel him on stage with me all the time. So that's really what pushed me to do this record. And we called it Unfinished because, it was this. The idea was I was just going to do this record because it was kind of like always in the air. Like my friends were like, when are you going to make a record? Are you ever going to make a record? And it did feel like this unfinished thing in my life. And so I said, you know what, let's just go do this. And then it's done. And I say, I did it, and check it off kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it actually did really well. And it started like momentum because I didn't make the record with any other. My only goal was to, at the end, I wanted to put it on and pour a glass of red wine, listen to it. And at the end, just be like, damn, girl, that's a great record. That was it. That was my only goal. And I think that's why people resonated with it. And so then it started a whole other chapter of my life that I didn't even see coming. And so then I started the label and here we are.
It's interesting with your record. Sometimes when you try too hard, when you try to make the hit, it never ends up happening. When you just do the music because you're passionate about it, because you love it, that's usually when the greatest work ends up happening. That's what I find. Absolutely. At least when you're chasing the charts, you miss it so much. When you chase your heart, whatever's happening, whatever's making this thing beat, that's when the real gold comes out for sure. And that's why it resonated with so many people.
More. Yeah. I think, it's swimming upstream when you're chasing in this business. I understand why people fall into it because the messaging is you need to chase the hit. You have to, stay on trend, be relevant, all of that messaging, and it's exhausting. And I get the business reasons behind it, but creatively it's a real conflict because we are at the mercy of the muse, spirit, life force, whatever language you want to use. We're just channels. Our job is to open and to let the channel come through us like the story without, Rivers Rutherford said it the most beautiful way, so without the static of our ego getting in the way. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if you're chasing charts, that's rooted in the ego part of us,
So I love talking about this. I love comparing songwriting to Shakespearean works, for example. You can take a Shakespeare play and you can make a movie out of it. And it can either take place in Shakespearean times, or it can take place in present day, or it can take place in the future as a sci-fi epic. And it will still work. It will still work because the script is so good. It's so strong. And I feel like when you're songwriting, if you chase what's in your heart, if you chase what's really true, that's the script. That's the real important stuff that should be absolutely timeless. And then when you're ready to produce this thing, that's when I think you can look towards the charts and say, okay, what are the current sounds and what are the things that you need? But the actual script itself has to be so strong. It has to be really, really amazing. When you just break it all down, when there's no bells and whistles on top of it, there's no pizzazz and everything. But I think that's what you did with yours, and look at how it performed. And then so you release this record. It does very, very well. You're performing everywhere. And what led you to starting a label?
Well, I think I can never turn off my business brain. It's just part of who I am. So I just always see things in that way. So it just made sense to have a label to release my own music. And then I had been doing consulting on the side here and there for artists because, with my business experience, artists would come to me and I'd be like, why aren't you looking at this from a business perspective as opposed to the way most artists think? And so from the consulting and the coaching that's kind of rolled into me taking artists on the label. And I say label, I'm careful when I say label. It is a label, but I don't run it in the traditional way. We run it like a co-op. It's an artist co-op. So we're all business partners together in this venture and helping each other to keep costs down. So we provide services for each other, like
Oh, cool.
girls sing for me, we play for each other, and when we travel together, we try to tackle the economics of it all, because it's very, very difficult. You need so much cash to develop artists. So we have a really nice group of artists that we just really like each other as humans and people, and it feels like a little family for real. And we're making it work, but it's very non-traditional.
So the artists themselves are actually working at the label as well. So they're on the label and they're doing different roles, just depending on what their secondary love is. They will step in and do promotion, marketing, different things like that, artwork.
Yeah, we break down the skills. Like one of my artists, Michaela Menzies, she's out in Victoria. She's an incredible graphic artist and does really wonderful video work. And so that's the department she's in charge of. And then the artists on the label are also coaches at the syndicate, because they're living the life that developing artists are coming to us for coaching on. And so when they're getting coaching, they're getting it from people who are living it every day.
That is awesome. I love this concept of your label, the non-traditional label. That's amazing. How do you find your artists for your label? Do they find you? Are you actively out there searching for people? How does it work?
Yeah, I'm no longer actively searching. I mean, Sam Stone, I've known her since she was 8 years old. She worked for me at my group of companies in transportation. And so that was a natural fit. I've got Jessica Pearson in the East Wind. She came to me as a consulting client about 8-9 years ago. She was the natural fit. And Michaela, young indie pop, indie rock. I've known her since she was, like, we all go way back. Like, she came to me for a consulting session when she was, I think, 14. And we started working together on and off just as a coach. So we all, like, nobody is like brand new. We have some kind of history together over the years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's amazing. Okay, tell me about the syndicate. How did that start? When did that start? Was that soon after the label, or was that part and parcel with the label? Did you start both of them at the same time?
I think pretty much at the same time. I kind of formalized, what I was kind of doing casually to help people. So I formed at the same time. It had a different name at first, though. It was called From the Roots Up. And it was one-on-one coaching, and I set it up as a membership community. So if you're an independent artist looking for coaching, you'd become a member of this community, and you'd get your one-on-one coaching. We would provide opportunities for you, like we do sessions, like songwriter sessions. I would facilitate co-writes between them as I got to know them and what their skill levels were. And then I had a health crisis. So in that pause, I had to let everybody go, and it was very sad. And so when I got better and I started up again, I rebranded it and brought in other people so that it wouldn't happen again, where if I go down, all my clients, all the artists are kind of left with
not just you.
support.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when I rebranded it, we called it the Syndicate, which is a play on words, because it's, a syndicate is a group of individual businesses working together towards the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
But we spell it CUT because we're all about songwriting and getting cuts and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. The cuts. There's somebody in the industry that I love this name that he's given himself. He calls him, instead of the Godfather, he's the Cut Father. And I always loved that name. I just thought Cut Father. You see his name on so many credits in the pop world, but it's just it's just classic.
Good for him. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, I think if you've got a name like that, you've got to really live up to it. You've got to be
right.
You can't just call yourself that and not have any cuts. So I know
not
that,
deliver. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Exactly. So I really get a sense from you that you love to help people out. You went through your own path, your own journey, and you want to make things a lot easier for people going forward with their own career, with their own path, with their own musical journey. And I mean, you now have this amazing book that has just come out called You and the Music Business that kind of wraps up everything. It sort of puts all of it in one location. and it's a great read. It's somewhere where anybody can come along and just really get a feel for what life is like, and steps to take, and tell me about, like, what was the initial thought behind that? Did you have this burning inside of you that you thought one day I should write a book and help even more people out, have more of a reach around the world? How did that come about?
Yeah, it kind of came about slowly because I started a blog, and I got so much surprising feedback from this blog, and I was like, oh, like people just really enjoyed my writing, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll write a book one day. And then I was talking to my team, and they're like, yeah, you should write that book, because people that don't have access to coaching, or they don't have management or a publisher or anything yet, they're feeling alone. And there's so many "This Is How You Make It in the Music Business" books out there, that, and they do them really well, that I didn't feel that that's what I needed to do. Like, the space I work in is less about "This is how you make it in the music business." Mine is more like, why do you want to be in the music business? Like, what is motivating you? What are you looking for? Where are you searching for validation outside of yourself? And, a lot of my work is about, my coaching really centers on, to be successful in the business of music, you first need to be successful in the business of you. So understanding yourself as a person, because really the core principles of business, no matter what the business is, really comes down to the same thing. Business is just about people. And the best way to understand people is to understand yourself. So that is really the key to being successful in business. And the other element too is, we're kind of sold this Cinderella story that's perpetuated in this messaging in this industry. And it's, you got to slug it out until somebody with power discovers you and plucks you from the masses and elevates you to stardom, and then you're rich and famous and your problems go away. And that messaging is perpetuated, all these sort of talent shows that we see, or these, your big break, the language around it, making it, your big break, the it factor. And so the messaging is very disempowering. So it makes people believe that that's the only way. That's the only way that they can sort of make it, or create a living. But as you know, there are so many ways to build a sustainable living in this business,
Yes.
especially today. But you have to change your frame of preference. You have to take your power back. And it's not that major labels or major publishers or anything are evil. There's nobody evil in this system, but there are so many bitter, heartbroken people because of misunderstanding, and not understanding how business works and why labels make the decisions that they make, and seeing yourself as a product. Like, you really have to understand that, yes, you're a human being, but in this model, you are also a product, like a sweater, or a pair of shoes. And so you have to start learning about that in an impersonal way, because it's not personal. It's just understanding, the economics and how business works.
It's something to sell, right? That's basically what you become. You become something to sell in that world.
Exactly. And, there's a way to make friends with that, in the sense that you value yourself, and valuing the relationship between artist and fan, and understanding the psychology of that in a capitalistic society driven by consumerism. When we try in our workshops and coaching to just shift that feeling of, you don't need somebody else to give you permission to live the life you envision for yourself.
Awesome. Oh, that's so good. It is so true. I mean, like, I used to feel that way. I used to feel like, as a songwriter, that I had to get the big worldwide #1 hit. I used to think that was the only way to have a career in the music industry. And so that's the way a lot of songwriters feel. They are constantly chasing that big, huge worldwide #1 hit. And the chances of getting that huge worldwide #1 hit are really, really, really slim. But then, as we're talking about right now, it turns out there's so many other ways that you can have a career in this business as a songwriter, even just where you can have a great life and a happy life, and a life that is supportive of a family, and just paying your bills and paying your taxes and everything, and still having a great lucrative career out of not chasing that huge worldwide #1 hit. You could be writing for film, you could be writing for TV, you could be writing for video games, you could be writing children's lullabies, you could be teaching music, you could be doing all sorts of other things, like literally thousands of different things that you could be doing. And you don't need to wait for somebody to sit back and say, yes, now you're ready to do this. So you can start at any point. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, and you find what you love to do, basically. I think that's kind of what you're saying now for artists as well. It's just like, why are you doing this?
It's like,
What are you,
what's your why? We say that 5,000 times a day. What's your why? What is motivating you? And why do you think this is the next thing you should be doing? And we really break it down. So it's like the book has one foot in self-care and self-help and one book in the music business, but it's an introspective look at your relationship with music and your relationship with yourself and how that is going to dictate your relationship with the business, with the industry.
oh, Tara, I think that's amazing. I don't think there's anybody else that's really doing that.
We haven't found it so far, and we've been getting so many surprising messages. And I've been quite emotional. It's been like 2 weeks now, and I'm still like get teary-eyed when I get messages, and some of them really stick with me. And I got a message the other day from somebody who grew up in a family his parents were very well-known musicians in Canada and the East Coast. And so his message was like, because he grew up witnessing the torment that this type of career can be on people. And he said, your book is going to bring a lot of healing to the hurt. And I hadn't seen it that way. Like, it wasn't my intent originally, but to get that feedback. And another artist said when she finished it, she was emotional, and she said, the book made me feel peaceful and powerful at the same time.
I get that.
Right? Like that, just it's like, and another artist said they were able to take like a deep breath and go, okay, it's okay. Where I'm at is okay. Like there is no there. There's only the moment that I'm in, and find like all these little, things that I've collected over the years that I've learned and applied to my own life. And so I've been so pleased that, the book has a wider appeal to, oh my gosh, my mother was so funny. My mother called me. I was in PI last week, and my mother called me, and she's like, your book came this morning. And I was like, oh, thanks for reading it. She goes, I'm on page 37. I just had to call you because it's like, it's so great. It's like really great. And then she starts laughing and says, I don't mean to sound surprised, but,
I didn't think it would be that great.
Well, what she was meaning to communicate was she was going to read it because she's my mom, but she doesn't work in the music business. So, she was like, I'm getting stuff from this. Like it was appealing to her, and she doesn't make music. And so that was really nice to hear too, that it has a bit of a broader appeal.
Oh, absolutely. Not just for people that want to get into the music industry, but people that want to get into any industry, really. It's just like, why, what is your why for doing this? I love asking people all the time. Imagine you've had that worldwide #1 hit, or maybe not that. Just imagine that you have somehow made $100 million. You have $100 billion in the bank, and you never have to work another day in your life. And once you've spent a year partying and touring the world, and you eventually get sick of that too.
Yep.
What do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your time? What's the stuff that really you're very passionate about? What's the stuff that you wake up thinking about? What's the stuff that you go through the day thinking about? If only I had time to do this. What is the stuff that really, really speaks to you? And whatever that answer is what you should be doing for this life, this short life that you've got here, where you don't worry about the money. You worry about, what is it that I'm passionate about? What do I love? And when you find that and you dive in with both feet and have so much fun doing it, the money is a byproduct. It starts coming in anyways. There's somebody at the Toronto Zoo that gets paid to shovel the poop that's there. So there's a way to monetize that. There's a way to monetize anything in this world, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody, right? It's just like, sorry to give you that visual right there, but
no, it's good. It's great. I mean, this is why we are soul sisters, Rob, because everything you just said was just like, that's it. And that is the key to life is like deceptively simple, in the sense that live in your joy and your passion. Realize that you only ever have the now. because the only thing that travels is your mind. Your mind goes to the past and your mind goes to the future, but you never go to the future or the past. You are always in the now. There
Slaves
is
to the
no,
present. That's right.
you stay the present and live your fullest joy and passion. And because then you're living in alignment and you're in the flow, the universe really responds to that and says, oh, like the universe responds to how we feel. And so if you feel abundance comes to you. So, you don't, it's ironic that we swim upstream, like stressed out, like I can't do music or I can't do art or I can't do whatever because I won't make enough money and blah, 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 because there's some very legitimate fears and real things there. But if you shift your focus, it's amazing what happens.
Well, I'm all about being financially secure. I'm definitely all about, I would never want to see anyone leave everything behind, leave like a great paying job to dive into something that's not earning you any income right now. Like it's really hard to be creative when you're worried about paying the bills. So if you can find something that does pay the bills, but also gives you time off, something that gives you your evenings and your weekends off so that you do have time to chase whatever it is that you're passionate about. And then once that passion starts making an income, and let's say it starts making about half of what you're making in the other job that's paying the bills, then I think then it's time to ditch what's paying the bills and put all of your energy into the passion because it's already making a certain amount. You've already got your roots starting to grow in there. You've got connections. And now if you really put all your energy into there, you could make 3 times the amount of what you're making in the regular day job in there. But
yeah, that's where the balance part comes in, right? Because that's a balanced approach. It doesn't mean that you don't believe in yourself. It doesn't mean that you're not a for real artist. It doesn't mean it. It just means you're approaching it in a balanced way because your emotional state matters. And if you were to walk away from your paying job and you still had rent or mortgage, well, then you'd be stressed.
Yeah.
You'd be anxious and stressed and unhappy, and you can't be creative in that space. So
that's right.
The balance, exactly the way you described it, is approaching it. That's what we do in a balanced way, because the reality is in today's music ecosystem, there's many spokes to the wheel that you have to have turning, like pushing you forward. And, you need to be securing income, whether it's teaching music. In my case, I coach, so because music itself, as you well know, and we've been through the decades of change where an album made money to now it does not. Like your music, recorded music is not a source of income anymore. A truly reliable one, because the cost of promotion outweighs what your streaming revenues are going to be, in generally speaking.
Right.
So you need many spokes of the wheel, but the balance and the, slow and steady and just, one foot in front of the other, appreciating what's around you, being grateful makes a big difference.
It's, it's not just us in the music industry. It's almost every industry. I was just listening to a great podcast featuring Tony Hawk, and Tony Hawk is somebody that is, top of their game. They're the spokesperson for skateboarding, but they're not just out of the park skateboarding all day. There's so many different facets to what Tony Hawk does in order to propel his career. There's the whole video game side of things, where he's in partnership with a company that works on video games with him, and he's very, very involved. There's education that he does. There's videos that he does. Like literally, there's probably about 20 different things that Tony Hawk is involved in order to keep this whole Tony Hawk enterprise going. It's not just one thing, and it's a real good eye opener for anybody that is wanting to get into any industry. It isn't just one thing. It ends up being a whole multifaceted thing that. But it is a bit, you're right. It's kind of like a garden that you have in front of you. You can't just water one part of your garden. You've got to water the entire thing, and you've got to take care of all the different aspects of it in order to keep that garden flourishing and producing for you. If you're hungry and you want to eat. Yeah.
Exactly. And most of us do.
Yes, we do. I relate everything to food. It's so funny. A lot of my analogies are all about food. I talk about popcorn a lot, and it's just like, what do I love to eat when I'm watching a movie? It's popcorn all the way. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Delicious.
So is this part 1 of like a 10-book series? Like, do you have other thoughts of continuing? Like this is one aspect of the music industry. You have so much experience in the music industry that you could probably go on and write about a whole bunch of other things and help more people, I'm assuming. Do you have an interest in that?
Yeah. I haven't thought about it entirely, but it's funny because with my publisher, we were trying to put together the name of the book, and I was, we're creative people, so we want it to be cool and creative. So I sent her a bunch of ideas, and she's like, "Nope." here's your 25 key words that you're allowed to use to put together your book title. Because everything is digital and data now, right? And you're basically you're trying to develop a relationship with artificial intel or machine learning or the algorithm before you even get to humans. So we ended up with this you and the music business. But at first I was like, oh God, it sounds so boring. But then as it revealed itself to me, because we really focused on you, it's all capital letters. And then I had this idea. I was like, well, I see a series because I could do you and social media, you and your emotional guidance system, because we don't really talk about that a lot, So I did see the potential for a you series kind of rolling out. So I love writing. I love how I feel when I write. I feel very calm. It's very calming for me. And so I do love that. Right now I'm working on a record. So I'm going to do the record cycle and then maybe come out with the next book after that.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the new record that's being worked on right now. Are you in the writing phase right now? Or are you in the recording phase? Where are you at?
I am in the recording phase and I am doing a project I've never done before. So this will be my 8th studio album.
That's great.
And I know. And I guess I'm allowed to talk about it now. We've been in pre-production for so long. So it is a tribute to the Canadian female artists who inspired me in my artistry.
Yes, please.
And I have the amazing opportunity to work with a producer named Jim Ed Norman. Are you familiar with that name?
I'm not, but I'd love to be.
You're more in the pop world than country. So he was involved with, he wrote the string arrangement for Desperado.
Wow.
And then
No.
I was involved in records with the Eagles and Kenny Rogers and Anne Murray and Linda Ronstadt, and the list goes, Emmylou Harris. And so it was, my manager just said, he came up with the idea and he was like, what about like a tribute record? It'd be so fun to do like a cover record. And I was like, okay, because as an original artist, I wasn't thinking of that, but I was getting where he was going with it. And he says, I have somebody that I think might say yes. And then he said yes. So Jim Ed ran Warner Nashville for 25 years or so. Okay. And then he ran Curb for a little bit as well. So he's really beloved and very well known and, kind of iconic or legendary and just the most beautiful human being and just so lovely. And so I was like, there's no way he'd ever say yes. This little indie artist from Ottawa, it's not happening, but he did. And so we have been working on this record and having the best time. But I'm telling you, doing a cover record is very hard because, right, you're threading the needle between honoring the artistry of the artist that inspired you, but making an arrangement and giving my own version of it so that when people listen to it, it doesn't inspire them to go back and listen to the original version, that they actually are getting something from the version you're creating.
Right.
So it's tough, because if you think about the female women we have, Celine, I grew up on Celine, like Celine is like queen to me. Yeah. I would never, ever cover one of her big songs because as a vocalist, you should not do that to yourself because you'll just be murdered because there's no way that I could ever do it the way or better or anything than Celine does it. So we had to really dig through the catalog and find one that I could do well and really and was believable coming from me. So we have like Celine, we did a really cool take on a Shania song, Sarah McLachlan, Jan Arden, who is my other I love them all, Katie Lang, Buffy St. Marie, Anne Murray.
Wow.
And what's super cool is it's kind of got a hold the music that made me feeling because I grew up also influenced by the music Jim Ed created. So like Anne Murray's You Needed Me was my father-daughter dance at my wedding. Desperado was the first song I ever sang publicly. Wow. And, so he's been in my life or influenced my life, having never known this person. And then talk about intersections, meeting people at certain times in your life. So we're having a blast. We had Gordon Moat on keys on it. Gordon is a blind piano player from Nashville. Super well known, Grammys, Dubs, the whole thing. The Gatlin brothers. Mm-hmm. He does a lot. He's actually he's touring with Alabama right now, playing some Canadian dates with them. And anyways, he was just such a great match for me in the studio because I'm a piano player as well, but I wouldn't play piano on my own records. But he just brought so much to the record, so we're kind of building it around the piano parts and my voice. So we're just doing this sort of skeleton arrangement of it. And then Jim Ed's building around that. So It's been so fun, and I can't wait. I can't wait to start sharing tracks from this
I
record.
love producing that way, where you record the
Right?
vocal and you record the dominant instrument, and then you build everything
Yes.
around that. Because to me, like that's the real star. You know, the vocal obviously is the biggest star, and then the dominant instrument is the one that is underneath that sort of molds into the vocal, and then if build rather than recording the drums first, then the bass, and then the rest of the bed tracks and everything. I love to record the most important stuff first, and then build and just I think that's brilliant. I got to
And
tell you a
just
funny
this,
story about Desperado.
yeah. Okay.
A good friend of mine that I grew up with in high school, Sean Cuthbertson. Hi, Sean, if you're listening. He was a huge Eagles fan and Don Henley, and rightfully so. It's all great music. But I was listening to a lot of, overly produced 80s music back then. And he was like, you got to listen to the Eagles. You got to listen to the Eagles. And I thought the Eagles was a football team at the beginning when he was telling me about this. I didn't know. So
I
then he
can't
said,
believe you're getting this on your podcast, but okay, great.
no, I don't know. I was much younger, much younger,
Okay.
and uh,
Forgiven,
and so he
forgiven.
said, "Listen, at the very least, just listen to this one song. Listen to Desperado." And so I
Mhm.
sat back and I listened to Desperado, and my jaw was just on the floor, like listening to this. And the string arrangement is absolutely incredible. And fast forward many years, I'm playing with Corey Hart, and it's his farewell show at the Bell Center. And at one point during our rehearsals, he's like, "I really want to do a special song. Does anybody here know Desperado?" And Sean and I used to play Desperado in high school. I would wheel out the piano into the middle of the auditorium and play, and Sean would sing. And we would just belt this at the top of our lungs, Desperado. And so I know Desperado. It's like muscle memory. I just know exactly how to play it. And the whole, I know it so off by heart, all the intricacies of it. And literally, Corey said, "Does anybody here know Desperado?" And I'm like, "I know it." And so I ended up playing at his farewell show. It's a really special song, and I'm so happy that you get to work with the person that did the string arrangement on Desperado. It's one of the best songs ever in the entire planet. So
I
great.
know it's, and hearing him talk about the process, I'm sure he's shared this before many times, but he really lived with the piano part and I think the singing, I think the vocal was done, and he just really lived with that for weeks, he said, before he, like, that's how he works. He really absorbs it and then, tries to find, like, if you listen to his work, what he does is he uses the colors of the chords in an orchestral arrangement to sort of pull out the emotion of the word or the line. So if you go back and you listen to the arrangement and you listen to, I think there's a reference to, is there rainbow? The lyric is rainbow, I think. If you listen to the chord structure or
If
the
there's a rainbow
chain,
above you, I think, is that the
yeah, I
lyric?
can't. I don't have them up in front of me, but if you go back and listen to it and really focus on the way that he uses the orchestral arrangements to just bring more emotional texture and life to the whole story, not just the other instruments. Like you were just saying, like how you like to produce, like it was really supporting the story. And he's doing the same thing with this, the way we're approaching this record. And I'm going to be a disaster when I hear his string work. Like I will just be a complete disaster emotionally. It's going to take me
Wow.
weeks to be able to to listen to our own record, but just, I mean, when you, and what's so funny about, some him in particular, and I've been very fortunate to work with people like this who are like lifers, they've been in forever. And, he's like, had been at the top of the top of the top. And I get a phone call from him and he's like driving and he's listening to these tracks that we've made and he's going through his process and he sounds like a 17-year-old kid. He's just like, "Oh my God, I was listening to like, the Alanis one we're doing." And he's like, "There's this moment in this, chorus coming in the chorus. There's just so much magic there." He's just like so excited about life and music. And that's
Yep.
always what it's been for him. Those are the people that build like long-term careers. Like you said, they just stay in it because the accolades and the money and stuff is great. Like that is great. And yes, you're grateful for it, but it isn't the motivator. Like
No.
for him, it's just the love of that moment of creating something so beautiful. And it's infectious working with him. It's a really great reminder.
I see that in you too. I just see your joy talking about music. Would you agree with me on this, that music never gets old?
It never does. It never gets old. It's, when it's woven into the fabric of who you are, It's just like breathing, like it's just part of who you are. And I mean, I've seen you talk about music too, and I've heard your work, which is incredible as well. And you just get that bubbling up feeling, like it's just like, oh my gosh, do we really get to do this? Like
Totally.
this can't be life. Like we get to make songs. This is amazing.
It is amazing, but that this goes back to your book. It's just we have found our why. We found
That's
what makes us tick. We found what it is that we truly love to do, and we would do this for free for the rest of time. Like it's because we're acting as if we've got all the money in the world, and this is what we want to do to fill up our time. That's exactly it. May we all find that. May everyone on this planet find that. We're also very lucky that we live in a part of the world where we can chase our dreams.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people that live in this world that have to wake up every day and search for clean water and search for food and all of that. So very, very grateful for where we are. I wish for a lot of changes around the world. I wish that the entire planet could live the way that we're living, where we get to chase our dreams. But it's
I
just
agree.
while you've got the chance to do it, you got to take full advantage of it and just chase those dreams. I think it's well worth anybody who's out there listening right now to go out and purchase this book. Where can they find this book? Is it online? Is it in stores? How would they find a copy of this
Yeah,
book to purchase?
a little bit of both. So right now, the best thing is to go either to Amazon.com or Amazon.ca. Can't really beat it. 2 days to your door. It's so fast. You can also go to my website, which is jointara.com, and you can order it there as well. And we are slowly rolling it out to the bookstores. So we're doing the local bookstores in Ottawa first, but I'll be doing a book tour. So if anybody's interested, they can just sign up on my website and they'll get information about what cities we'll be in and where we'll be talking about it. Yeah, so that's the best place to go. It's my website.
I hope you record an audiobook of this as well, because to hear you read it and hear the joy in your voice as you're saying your own words would be just over the
We
top, I would
did.
think. Oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
did.
we did.
Oh, you did. Okay, great.
Yeah, and you know what's super cool? My son is studying sound engineering. So he's taking the same class, the same diploma that I took a couple years ago. And so I did it at the studio, like where I'm sitting right now is Raven Street Studio, and the college is actually called Tara, which is ironic. It's the Audio Recording Academy. And so when I graduated from here and I brought all my kids to grad, we're walking up to the building, and my youngest was probably 7 or 8 at the time, and she says, "Mom, they named the building after you." And I was like, "That's right, they did." And so my son is studying, and so he sat in on the engineering sessions to do the audio book. So it was a bit of a family thing, which made me emotional because I talk about things in our family a little bit in the book, and I started to cry. We had to keep starting because he was emotional, I was emotional. So, but it was lovely. It was a fun experience. So that'll be out in a couple of weeks. The audio one.
Ah, that's great. That's great. That segues really nicely into my next section, which is probably going to be our last section. I know your time is limited and you've got something coming up. Just with the youth, with those that are just getting started, those that are thinking about getting into the career of music in whatever fashion that is. There's so many different careers that they can choose. Do you have any advice for someone who is just out there getting started? Any young female that is wanting to get into this industry, and is somebody that identifies as female or female themselves?
Absolutely. Well, first, if you're passionate about music, follow it, because if you try not to, you're going to end up miserable and coming back to music anyways. So just spare yourself the long road. So if you are passionate about music and you can't imagine your life any other way, then follow it, no matter what people are saying, no matter what people are saying around you. You need a plan B, get an education first, blah, blah, blah. Just follow your heart. That's my first piece of information. Second, our advice. Second one is we need more women in the music industry. We
Yep.
need a lot more women doing all kinds of jobs, producing, sound engineering, artistic direction, technical people on live shows, and touring teams. So if you love it, follow it, because we need more women present around. And the other thing that I see a lot that I would encourage people not to do is don't make yourself smaller when you're fitting in a space that you're unsure of. Sometimes, especially young women, they'll make themselves smaller and they won't speak their truth. They hesitate to say what they want and, what they like. So I would just encourage them to trust their voice and to speak it, because they're going to find more receptive people than not. So, because it is a male dominated industry, but my experience has been like wonderful producers like you and mentors and in this space, creating space for women so that they can feel safe and empowered to speak their minds and to contribute from where they see things. So not try to be the same, because our brains are wired differently. We see things differently. So it's such a compliment when you can have both aspects, in this space. So those would be my three things, I think.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, it is. It is interesting how the brains are wired differently, but it's just, if you can create something where both sides are equally represented in there, that way anybody can listen to it and really get it and really understand it. And it's I know I love records where it's just been a real great combination between everyone and you really feel it. I hate the records when it's just totally male dominated and you really just feel this it's hard to get into, for sure. But just when you've had creativity from all sides, it's beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Some of my favorite records, though, I have to say, are completely female run. Yeah. and recorded and produced and written and all of that. I love everything about it. Love it. And I want more of that. That's but yeah.
So true. And I think to get away, it helps to look at it. I look at it as energies, like female energy and masculine energy, as opposed to gender, because we're in a very complex conversation about gender right now in society.
Yes.
But if you look at it like energies, and I read this beautiful saying, I wish that I could remember it word for word. A listener can Google it and tell us how wrong I got this. But the essence of it was humanity up till now has been an eagle flying with one wing. And the feminine is the unfurling of the other wing. And so we collectively as humanity will fly in a balanced forward way as both wings unfurl. And I just thought that's not quite right, but it's something about that, like that. And it was so beautiful. And so I think that, like you're saying, from a creative standpoint, feminine energy is creation. Like the feminine energy actually like creates life and, brings it forward. So
absolutely,
when we make room in our art for both, it's so much more powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, these are great words. Wise words from the one and only Tara Shannon. Tara, it's been such a pleasure hanging out with you and hearing you speak and learning more about you and hopefully inspiring somebody out there who's listening to this. It's great. Go listen to her music. Go buy her book. Just be a fan of all things Tara Shannon, and you won't go wrong. I thank you so much for you being here and sharing your world of knowledge with us. It's fantastic.
Thank you for such a great conversation, and thank you for what you're doing with this podcast, Women in Music, and making this conversation ongoing. Really appreciate it, and it's been great being here.
Thank you. My absolute pleasure. Okay. Thank you, Tara. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of Women in the Music Industry. We will be back again next week with another. Thanks for joining. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Stay tuned for the next episode of Women in the Music Industry, coming soon. Let's embark on this incredible journey together, celebrating the women who are reshaping the music business one note at a time. If you enjoyed hearing this podcast, please take a moment and give it a like, a rating, or a follow. Your support helps immensely. We'll see you next time.